Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Miss Camay Show. I'm your host, Miss Camay, and we are broadcasting live from the entertainment capital of the world. You know where we're at, same place, same time every month. Happy 2023. We have an amazing lineup this year. Amazing guests. We're really diving deep into topics that people really want information about. And I'm bringing in the experts for you to give you all the information and answer all the questions that you'll have. Today, I'm interviewing, oh my gosh, just this woman is so fabulous. And I say that about all of my guests because they all truly are fabulous. But Dr. Jennifer Fraser, she's an amazing woman. She's been talking about workplace bullying and the brain damage of bullying and abuse. She's written a book, The Bullied Brain, which I have right here with me. For those of you who don't know, it's amazing book. I love this boxing glove here because we are in the boxing ring and we're just battling this out. Welcome to the show, Dr. Fraser. How are you today?
I feel great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we are here today. We are going to talk about you and The Bullied Brain, your book. You are actually a whistleblower teacher who has witnessed bullying. You've witnessed teachers bullying students. And at one point, you actually discovered that your own son was being targeted. You are an older sister to a younger brother. And when you were growing up, you saw that your brother's brilliance did not protect him from bullying by his peers and inadvertently by teachers. I've read your book. I'm still reading it. It's amazing. It's like the light is coming on, like paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. I want to share Dr. Leanne Gray, who's the author of Educational Trauma. She says that the bullied brain represents the culmination of collective wisdom, humanity's capacity for empathy, scientific awareness, and cohesion. She says it is the most advanced way of looking at the bullying problem and solutions that directly address the heart of the matter. So welcome to the show, Dr. Fraser. So why the book? Why did you choose to write on this topic? It's full of a lot of research. You said in our pre-interview that society no longer respects or legally protects the truth. And that was profound when you said that to me. So why the book? Why did you write this book?
Well, it was 10 years to the day that the book came out that I found myself caught up in this bullying scenario. And everything that I had believed was proven to me to be false. So I believed that the education system would never tolerate for a moment teachers who are being emotionally and physically abusive of students. Well, I was wrong. I did not ever believe that government institutions empowered to protect children, like the Commissioner for Teacher Regulation in British Columbia, where I live in Canada, I wouldn't have believed in a million years if you told me that they would bend over backwards, do actually illegal things to protect the perpetrators of abuse and not their child victims. I just honestly couldn't have wrapped my mind around it. So my training is, I have a PhD in comparative literature from University of Toronto, and we were trained to take these different discourses, different ways of thinking, put them into the arena, the boxing ring, and see if the conversation changed when they were actually having to dialogue and debate with one another. Mm-hmm. So for this book, I said to myself, okay, the systems we have in place are broken. They are absolutely broken. They are not protecting victims of abuse in the workplace. They're not protecting them in schools. They're not protecting them in sports. Mm-hmm. They are actually protecting perpetrators of abuse. We have enabled normalized abuse in our society, bullying behaviors everywhere you turn. And we know it hurts us. It hurts all of us. It hurts our communities. So I said to myself, well, what's the best way to debunk a myth? Science. And so I turned to the scientists and the evidence to find out, is in fact bullying just a fine rite of passage? We grow up with it, we do it, whatever. The powerful people do it, it gives them prestige. Or is it actually destructive? And what I found out was the part of ourselves that we most ignore our brains
Yes.
are completely negatively physically impacted by all forms of bullying and abuse. It can be seen on a brain scan. And that's when I said to myself, you know, I'm a teacher at heart. I was like, whoa, everybody needs to know this science. Nobody's telling us. So I'm going to have to use my educational powers to get the science out to the people.
So how hard was the science to find?
It was as easy as could be. I mean, I'm trained to turn to research, decode research, understand it, use the conclusions appropriately, insert them into, you know, written matter or presentations so that it can be meaningful and it can be applied. I mean, there's no point in having all this neuroscience. There's no point in all this brain science if it just sits in the laboratories of these brilliant scientists.
Right.
We need to get it out to our kids. We need to put it into the workplace. We need bullying individuals to understand how much they're hurting their own brains as well as their targets' brains. Like it's just destructive and unhealthy. So I had no problem finding the research. I mean, this is my fourth book. I'm used to getting the research. What's really fascinating though is I couldn't, as a non-scientist, understand what's referred to as deep science. The deep science of the brain is so incredibly complex. I wouldn't even be able to understand it. But world-renowned, internationally most highly awarded neuroscientist, Dr. Michael Merzenich, he said to me that what he loved about the book was the behavioral science, the behavioral neuroscience I used is backed by thousands of deep science references. So we lay people of non-science background, we don't need to know the deep science, just like we don't need to know oncology or really understand cancer in order to know that smoking is really bad for us. It's correlated with cancer. Do we have to know the intricacies of the lung and the cancer and how it works? No, we just need to know it's destructive. Same thing, bullying and abuse, it's like a cancer. We need to stop it. It's harmful to us.
Yeah. You referenced Dr. Mesnick. Is that how you pronounce it?
Merzenich.
You reference Dr. Merzenich many times in your book, and I love how you've outlined the book. I love how you laid it out. So readers who who are interested or curious about the Bullied Brain, you actually, it's a 10-chapter book. And within your chapters, excuse me, which I really love because even though this isn't classified as a self-help book, you actually offer help and you offer, direction and suggestions for people who are reading the book. So I just want to go through the chapters quickly. Your first chapter, Open Your Mind to the 21st Century Scientific Revolution. And this is what we're talking about, right? Just the science. I'm just amazed that the science that you found was not hard to find. It's essentially, right at our fingertips. The first step that you offer in the chapter is to harness your neuroplasticity. You offer 5 essential principles to help you make an informed shift from ignoring the brain to learning how to harness its neuroplastic power. Your second chapter, Refuse the Life That Abuse is a Necessary Evil. Learn to Disobey is the third chapter. Exit the Cage of Learned Helplessness. I haven't made it to this chapter yet, but I can, oh my gosh, I want to jump to that chapter. I want to read that out of order. Prevent the cancerous confusion of bullycide. And I know bullycide is a term, that you kind of have introduced and, explain in your book as well. Return your brain to its golden potential. So huge, so huge. Stop identifying with the abuser. That's chapter 7. Chapter 8, Heal Your Brain with Your Mind. Chapter 9, Restore Your Brain with Your Mind. And lastly, chapter 10, Listen to Your Mind, Body, Brain. And the step there is Hear Your Whole Voice. So I love that you've outlined the book and you've written the book in this manner because, as you know, so many people who have been bullied, who've experienced that trauma, and I'm, speaking of bullying in the workplace, they have no idea the power of their brain. And so you talk about many opportunities for strengthening and recovering brains. Society tends to dismiss bullying, because it leaves no obvious injuries and it is essentially understood as hurtings a victim's feelings. So in your book, you talk about if somebody's arm is broken, we can visibly see that injury. And so, we're going to immediately go get the treatment that we need. But any, silent injury that can't be seen doesn't get that same attention. So talk to us a little bit about that, the opportunities for strengthening and recovering brains.
Well, the broken arm actually is a really great comparison. So let's imagine that for a second. And again, it goes back to what we can see and not see. Human beings are extremely visual animals. We are all about what we can see. So without
we like the here and now, right?
Totally.
We want it here and now.
Totally. So if my arm is broken, but it doesn't break through the skin, you and I would not be able to know that it was broken.
Right.
But it hurts so much. I mean, we would be definitely feeling extreme pain and it wouldn't be working properly. We would go to a professional. We'd get an X-ray. The X-ray would get put up on the illuminated screen, and we would see indeed that bone is broken.
Right.
So we now have the capacity with non-invasive technology to do the same thing with the brain.
Right.
So if I was being bullied or abused, in any kind of variety of way, it could be psychological, verbal, emotional, sexual harassment. It could be any of these things. I may well have neurological scars in my brain, and you would be able to see them on a EEG. You'd be able to see them on a brain scan, and you'd know that there was something wrong because I'd be in pain basically, and that pain might manifest as feeling depressed, feeling extreme anxiety about going to work, not being able to remember or focus. These are all brain manifestations when it's under a lot of stress. What happens is the sympathetic nervous system gets activated because the brain is all about survival. The first thing it cares about is survival. So if you're in a toxic workplace, your brain interprets it as you having to repeatedly encounter what to its way of thinking is a predator. And, in the literature, individuals who are abusive are referred to as intra-species predators. That means human to human harm. We are harming our own species, including children. It's very unnatural behavior. So if you have to go to work and face a bullying individual, your brain is on hyperdrive going, oh no, this is like terrible for survival.
Right.
We are at risk. And so it's pumping up the sympathetic nervous system to keep you safe.
Right.
What it's doing, and your audience probably knows this, but let's put it in this context. What the brain and body are doing is preparing to fight the predator.
Right.
So in the 21st century, it's not like you can go into work and start, having some big brawl with the bullying individuals, right? You can't do that.
Yeah, despite the fact that we might want to, because that might end the bullying.
Yeah, well, and some people do, as we know. Some people are, we have a society where one of our biggest issues is violence and aggression, and it comes from people who are profoundly harmed. They're not acting out a happy home life. They're acting out trauma, right?
Correct.
So in the workplace, you've got the fight option, and some people will manifest that, and that might work for them. You've got flight, so you call in sick,
right?
And you've got freeze. You go into work, but you're just so riddled with anxiety that you struggle to get things done. Because really what you're doing, your brain is actually watching. It's watching for the predator. It's watching it's anticipating the next onslaught.
Right.
It's getting ready for another attack. And so it can't concentrate. It can't remember. It's not good at problem solving. It doesn't make good decisions. Right. So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. The bullying individual actually makes you like incompetent. They make you struggle so much that you can't show your talent. It's really an awful sort of a vicious circle.
Right. Kind of like that whole, if you're in the woods and a grizzly bear shows up, your mind engages with your brain and your brain engages with your body. And you're like, okay, I got to fight this bear. Yeah. So, your levels of cortisol, your adrenaline, you again, engaging your mind with your brain and your brain with your body, which, we'll talk a little bit later in the interview. So your body starts to respond physically. Your body responds as if you're having to fight this grizzly bear. So that's essentially what you're explaining. You know, you get up, you're going into this forest, and your brain knows the bear's there somewhere. And so you get there, you arrive, and your brain is just waiting, like you said, waiting for the grizzly bear to show up, correct? Same concept.
Exactly. Yeah. And I want to go back to something that you and I talked about before. We talked about how if you have trauma in your past, your brain has essentially been wired by that trauma. And because we don't ever talk about our brains, or we don't do healthy things for our brains, we're not taught, our doctors never say to us, hey, have you had a brain checkup this year?
Yeah.
I mean, that answer is no for most of us. I've never had a brain. What do you mean a brain checkup?
Well,
I get my teeth looked at. I get my eyes checked. Hearing test for sure. Wait, what is this thing you call a brain? You know?
Well, and right. And Dr. Fraser, why aren't they? Why, why isn't that a common annual, test? Insurance, like you're saying, oh, a brain scan. So my mind goes to insurance. Does my insurance cover it? What's my deductible? How much is it going to cost? Can I afford it? Can I afford to get this treatment that I potentially desperately need for my health and my future survival? Can I even get this? Is my doctor even talking to me about this?
Your doctor is most likely not talking to you about it, but cut back to back in the day in the 80s, and this is a really perfect way of thinking about it. In the 80s, when I was growing up, I was a teenager, your doctor did not talk to you about fitness. They didn't even really use the word. I mean, people weren't talking about aerobic exercise. That wasn't a thing. And what your doctor would do is sit across from you, and she'd be smoking a cigarette and filling in a prescription for you.
Right.
And you might be smoking a cigarette too.
Yeah.
And then you'd go to a restaurant and have another cigarette, and then you'd go to a nightclub and have one. You'd smoke at home in front of your kids. You'd go to school and smoke. Your professor smoked. I mean, it was normal. Right now in our society, we are at a tipping point. I absolutely believe we are moments from a scientific revolution. Same thing that happened in the 80s, where all of a sudden the workplace went, hey, this aerobic exercise thing, this business about fitness, this saves us a lot of money. If our employees are getting a gym card and they're going to the gym in fact, let's make a gym right in the center of our office building, because we want our worker. Well, wait a second, let's get them walking desks or bicycling desks, because the more fit our employees are, the smarter they are, the less sick days they have, the more retention that they are, they're more talented. They want to work with us because they're happy, they're kinder to one another. Like, wow, this fitness thing is a game changer. And the reason why it's such a good comparison to brain health and brain fitness and going to the brain gym is because it allows us to take charge of our own health. So your insurance should cover an EEG it should cover it for our children. We should be able to take our kids in, especially before adolescence, when all sorts of mental health issues manifest with very intensively developing brains. From 13 to 24, our kids are at huge risk. And we have the science, we have the brain training to actually protect their brains during that very fraught and difficult time. And it would save society in billions of dollars. And it would teach kids that it was actually up to them. They could do this brain training half an hour a day. It's not expensive. It's designed by neuroscientists, and it keeps their brains healthy, and it strengthens areas that are weak. All kids should be doing that in school. But we haven't hit the tipping point yet. And this is what my book is about. My book and the consulting I do and the work I do with schools and organizations is to say, you know what? Why don't you be an early adopter? Why don't you absolutely get out there and understand that the brain is arguably the most important part of our bodies, and we've got to stop ignoring it. Let's work with it instead of against it.
Right. In your book, you write about your brother a little, you touch on your brother. And, back when you and I were kids and we were in school, there was one way of teaching and one way of learning, right? And in your book, you talk about your brother's brilliance. And it actually brought me to tears, and I'm even getting a little choked up, talking about it now. But you talked about your brother's ability to read, and just these so many things that were great, such greatness in your brother, right? But it didn't it didn't align well with how he was being taught in school, and how he was being allowed to, I guess, regurgitate what he was taught and how he learned it, correct? And so like, I remember ninth grade algebra, my best friend was in advanced algebra. I was in algebra 1-2, she was in algebra 3-4, and my algebra teacher was forcing her teaching method down my throat, essentially. And I couldn't understand it. It was confusing to me. I was frustrated. My teacher was frustrated with me. So I actually reached out to my best friend, because she was in advanced algebra, and I asked her to help me. So she sat down with me, maybe a 30-minute, like, I guess, tutoring session, right? She showed me the way that she was completing these algebraic equations in advanced algebra. And I instantly got it. It instantly made sense. I was like elated that I finally understood it. And I went back, I completed my homework with my best friend. The answers were correct. And I took my homework back to my teacher, and she gave me an F. Even though the answers were correct, I didn't do my work the way she showed us how to, the way that she taught us how to do the work. So she refused to accept it, and she flunked me out of algebra. And so when I was reading your book, and I was reading about your brother and how you talked about his brilliance, and how and I think the educational system is coming along, and it's definitely not where it used to be. But back in the day, like, you were taught one way, and that's the way you were taught, and you were expected to learn. And if you didn't, teachers would bully you, teachers would flunk you. I remember flunking out of that algebra class and trying to go to geometry, which I absolutely did not understand. And then in my, in high school, I was eventually sent back to basic math, like addition, multiplication, subtraction, and division. And that did nothing for me, nothing for my self-esteem at all. It was just it was horrible. And a lot of memory I've lost, because it was so many years ago. So what's your take on that? Because we're talking about, bullying in schools, and it coming from teachers. And, we have children in school that are brilliant. They are geniuses. You mentioned in your book regarding your brother, like, writing wasn't really a, strong suit for him, but then years later, computers, came along, and oh my God, that's all he needed. That's what he needed. So, how do you feel, regarding the education system? You're a teacher yourself, and where we've been, and, where we need to be, in order to recognize the brilliance and the intelligence and the greatness in our students, regardless of what a teacher's opinion of teaching, or, the curriculum that she's teaching, he or she is teaching, and how students understand that. Do you think that, we have, some flexibility with that, in general education, or even in higher education? How do you think that that's playing a role to actually help eliminate bullying in our schools, if at all?
Well, I think the school system has come a long way from when we were at school. I think there's definitely a huge improvement, and that's just a generalization. I think you get schools that are very, very ahead of the curve, and then schools that are falling behind and struggling. So I don't want to just blanket say, oh, school's not like that anymore. I mean, I ended up getting very engaged in this whole system of bullying, because it was educators bullying kids. And that's what I was starting to unpack and try and figure out. I was like,
Right.
where is this coming from? And why is everyone working so hard to ensure that they're not held accountable? I couldn't understand it. But, once you start to really look at bullying, you understand that it's a cycle. And psychologists have been telling us this forever, psychiatrists have been telling us forever. But I found it made more sense to me, like that moment of illumination that you're talking about. It made more sense for me when I could understand that a brain has actually been sculpted by a traumatic past, a bullying past. If you had a very harsh, critical, unkind, humiliating parent, chances are good you're going to repeat those behaviors when you become an adult. And so if you have a teacher who's behaving that way, chances are very good they come by it honestly. Their brain is wired that way, and we don't have a system that holds them necessarily accountable and says, look, you're actually doing more damage than good. Now, for me, what I see as a really exciting shift in society is I was terrible at math as well in school. I couldn't understand it, made no sense for me. And who cares?
I knew how to add and subtract, like add money coming in and subtract what's going out. That's it.
And did you need to know anything else? Math does nothing for me in my life, in my professional life, in my my double BA, in my master's, in my PhD, I didn't need any math. So while the school system made me feel desperate and frantic and limited, I had so many emotional traumas around this one particular subject that I didn't actually need. And that's really where the education system is missing the boat. And look, it's the 21st century. We don't need kids to be able to memorize information and regurgitate it. We have the internet. And while memory is, you don't want to mess with memory, it's incredibly important. And you want to strengthen kids' memories, and you want them to really constantly work their working memory, because that's how you problem solve. That's how you hold multiple ideas in your head for stretches of period or stretches of time in order to be able to do things. Like, I'm not suggesting that memory isn't critical, but we do know, and we've known for a long time, that if you memorize something for a test, write it down, within days it's gone. So that type of exercise is no longer a way to measure a child's capacity. And I think we're moving into an era where there's definitely an understanding that we have diverse brains. Like, what I found fascinating reading the scientists was our brains are unique. Like, they are as unique as our fingerprints. There's not a single human brain out there on the planet that is the same as yours. So school should have what Dr. John Medina calls, teachers should have theory of mind. And theory of mind is when you have deep empathy and you're trying to see the world from the student's point of view and then coach them from that place. And really, great teachers are teachers who are curious. They're curious about the kids in their class, and they want to know, they want to find out the perfect technique for turning that light bulb on. Like, teachers who love to teach, they will all talk to you about the light bulb moment. Like, when they finally found a way to say, okay, I see how you're thinking about this algebra. I've never thought of it that way. That's kind of exciting. Can you show me how you're doing it? Show me your method. Because that will expand my repertoire. And the next time I get a student who's struggling like you were, I can be like, that's just like Miss Camay's brain. I'm going to apply her logic to it.
And maybe this will work. Maybe this will work.
Absolutely. And and then the other thing too with school is, if you look at the world of career now, lots of jobs that are more kind of factory style, let's say, they're getting replaced by artificial intelligence. They're getting replaced by robots and machines that can do things. So if that's the case, what we want to be doing is teaching our kids creativity, teaching them incredible social emotional skills, teaching them empathy, teaching them self-regulation. If you in the neuroscience, they know kids who have very successful careers, it's not because they have the best academics, it's because they have the best self-regulation. They are the leader who doesn't lose their cool. They are the parent who is really able to listen and advise, as opposed to flying off the handle like many of us parents do in our best moments. They are, people who self-regulate don't lose their temper. They don't get violent. They don't get aggressive. They certainly don't bully people. They're actually wise. They're mindful. They are able to choose the emotion concept for the moment. They don't just react. They're deeply responsive. That is golden in the workplace. So how come we're not teaching our kids?
Right. Well, I mean, just talking about it right now, I can hold myself accountable and say, I need to self-regulate more. I need to work on that.
Me
Because
too.
right. I mean, I think, for people who are passionate, who are very passionate about what they're doing, or passionate about a conversation that they're having, or passionate about the job that they have. And, they want to fight for it, right? And they want to be heard, and they want what they're saying to be acknowledged. And so there's a way to do that. Like yesterday, my husband and I were at the grocery store, and I got this new credit card, and I'm trying to earn these rewards and these points, and the credit card wouldn't work, and I'm on the phone on hold, and they finally answer, and my husband is like, "You should have heard yourself. I should have recorded you." And I'm like, "Yeah, I want my rewards." I want what I'm entitled to. So yeah, I think that's absolutely something that is a huge takeaway from our interview is, self-regulating. Despite the trauma, despite abuse, right? Despite what has happened to us, despite the life that is happening through us, we have the power and the ability to rewire our brains, connect our mind to our brain, to our body, and actually manifest and change the trajectory of our life, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I found most fascinating in the neuroscience, and it's just another way of sort of emphasizing what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have a tendency to think that we get triggered. Something triggers us out in the world, and then due to our trauma or due to we're having a stressful day or whatever, we react. But that's not actually how the brain works. What the brain does is it is predicting. So it is so advanced, it's so fast, we don't even notice that it's doing it. But
Right.
based on our past experiences, we got a
Yes.
file folder in the brain,
Yes.
it predicts what the smart emotion concept is, or the most healthy, the best for survival emotion concept is for the situation.
Yes.
So your brain, let's use your rewards card, your brain, it was predicting that these types of frustrations, these types of dismissals, these types of making you feel like you're not going to get acknowledged for what you've done, which is pretty fabulous, sounds a lot like algebra and this highly abusive teacher you had.
Mm-hmm.
When you are given finally the opportunity, you're just like, boom, you
Yeah.
explode onto the phone because your brain decides that the proper emotion concept, because the one it used back in the day when you didn't have power, it
Yes.
didn't bring you any health or well-being or
Right.
energy. It
Or
actually took all
results.
those things away from you. It was a lot of losses. So
Yes.
it's really good at it's called error prediction error, where
So
it
the
will change.
your body keeps the score.
It's oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
that but Bessel van der Kolk's work is just such a game changer for so many of us. And and what's really fascinating is when we choose emotion concepts, we're actually impacting what's called the body budget by uh, Lisa Feldman Barrett is the neuroscientist who uses that language, but I love
Mhm.
it. It's a really great way to keep track of what's going on. So imagine your body budget. You're a teenager, you don't have power, and the abusive algebra teacher comes into the room.
Mm-hmm.
You lose energy from that. You get a withdrawal because your body and your brain start to feel a lot of stress. It's not a
Oh,
trustworthy person. They're not in your corner. They
yeah.
don't get you. They might mean well and think that their method is got to be taught in a certain way, but it's actually really harmful to you. And you don't have a way to articulate it. You're just a kid.
Sure.
So imagine you're getting this withdrawal. Well, you've got to find things to replace it. So
Mm.
the healthy ones, of course, are like really good nutritional food, sleep,
Yes.
connection with friends and family. Those are
Yes.
going to get your investments back, and that's okay. But lots of people don't have that necessarily.
Right.
And so they keep getting depleted, and that's
Yeah.
really bad for your health.
Yes. 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 We could talk for hours about your book. We could talk for hours about, neuroplasticity and brain scans, showing neurological trauma for hours and hours. I feel. We are no stranger to bullying in the workplace. I grew up, with bullying as an adolescent in school as well. seeing other people being bullied in the workplace, seeing other children being bullied. My last question to you, and again, anyone who's watching this interview, our audience, if you're being bullied, if you know someone that's being bullied in the workplace, if you have friends who have children who are being bullied, this book is an absolute must read. It offers so much insight, so much education, so much information that is going to help any target of bullying in any capacity. Dr. Fraser, my final question for you, with all of the neuroscience, with all of this research that is simply at our fingertips, the information is there. The messages are being, tweeted, and Facebook posts and YouTube channels. All of this information, all of this science, all of this documentation is there. Why is our society ignoring it? Why are they ignoring it? Why do you think?
It goes back to the fundamental aspect of the brain, which is that hurt brains hurt. So if you have a hurt brain, chances are very good you're going to hurt yourself, or you're going to hurt other people, and you're going to think that it's normal. So the more we allow individuals to keep firing up and wiring in these types of neural networks, they become automatic, they become default neural networks, they become normalized. The human brain is incredibly adept at normalizing situations. And so and this is where some of the chapter titles you read out, this is what happens. You develop learned helplessness. And this is well documented in research. You think that you can't ever escape the toxic environment. It's
Right.
all you know. It's how your brain is wired. You believe that you have to stay there and that you can't escape. And it's not true. It's called,
Right.
the other phrase that the researchers use is a perception of inescapability. So, as you and I've talked about in your work, one of your biggest hurdles is to get someone to understand that they don't have to subject themselves to
Right.
this normalized toxic environment. They can escape. They
Right.
can disobey. They can unlearn all of these destructive things. But you can well imagine in a society, and I think we're at a place where, we're watching, if we just think international politics for a moment, there's a real backward momentum to, if you look at the war in Russia that they've unleashed, this is very backwards. It's incredibly destructive, but it didn't come out of left field. It didn't come out of neuroscience. It didn't come out of new discovery and understanding of how humanity flourishes. It comes from deeply entrenched neural networks that don't know how to think differently. And it's so fascinating. The neuroscientists will study the brains of people who have been raised in totalitarian dictatorships, and they are not creative. They're not flexible. They are like, if you compare them to a brain that's allowed to vote, or a brain that's allowed to have its own ideas, or doesn't get disappeared when it criticizes the ruling party, you're seeing two different worlds. And, I want to end on how hopeful I am. Like, I believe, as I've said before, we're on a tipping point. There is a revolution. And and this is why I want people to read the book, because the book empowers you to take charge of your own brain and then share that knowledge with everyone you encounter and say, you don't have to behave this way. If somebody was bullying me, the first thing I would say to them is, oh my gosh, I feel so sorry for you.
Right.
You are manifesting to me and everyone around us, all these bystanders, you have a mental illness. And that mental illness you're manifesting is correlated with criminality. And I'm worried about you, and I want you to get the help that you need. I'm going to take you by the hand, and I am going to walk you into a mental health professional's office so that we can get your organic brain health back, because I know we can.
Yeah, I would love to hear those responses.
Yeah.
That is the goal, right? That is the end goal. That is the end goal for sure. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Fraser. We have just really touched the tip of the iceberg on this topic, on your book. I thank you so much for joining me and sharing your knowledge and your expertise. I'm so grateful to be connected with you. I know that this is not our last work that we are going to be doing together. Where can people connect with you, and most importantly, where can people get your book?
So my website is Bullied Brain. just bulliedbrain.com. And there's a contact form there if you want to connect with me. And there's tons of free resources. It's wall to wall, articles. I write for Psychology Today, and I write a blog. There's just a million things. And my book, you can get it everywhere, but it's probably easiest to get it on Amazon.
Okay.
And it's The Bullied Brain: Heal Your Scars and Restore Your Health. And yeah, I would love for people to, if they do get the book on Amazon and they want to, respond, please give me a review. It's super helpful for us authors. The more we get reviews, the more it trips up the algorithm and it gets Amazon to notice us. And so, as you know, I'm desperate to get the science out there. I especially want it to help people. And I think it can actually save lives. The more people know about their brains, the safer they're going to be. And I hope this tipping point happens.
Yes. Well, it will with your continued work, your continued, dedication and commitment, to healing people. I'm so grateful for the information. I honestly am. I've been working on my adverse childhood experiences, my trauma, and my triggers. My husband and I, actively work on that every day in our marriage. And, this book is just another, item in our arsenal of self-help and helping ourselves. So thank you so much, Dr. Fraser, for the interview today. For those of you, again, watching, you can find her book, The Bullied Brain, on Amazon.com, thebulliedbrain.com. Connect directly with Dr. Fraser. She is here to help us. Thank you so much, Dr. Fraser. Have a fabulous rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miss Camay. It was wonderful to speak with you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. This is the Miss Camay Show. Thank you so much.